In this tutorial, we'll be creating patterned objects quickly, efficiently, and accurately using the Transform Again feature in Adobe Illustrator. We'll be doing several small components. The first one we'll be doing will look like this flower shape, also similar to an old children's toy called a spirograph, which drew patterned objects. Then we'll create something akin to a snowflake, looking something like this. Next we'll do something like railroad ties moving into perspective. And then finally we'll be doing something that looks a little bit like a seashell. So let's start off with the spirograph shape, and I'll move over to Adobe Illustrator now, which I have open. And we'll just start a new file. Let's go File, New. I'll make it letter size, CMYK color, and I'll name this Transform underscore again. Click OK. And again, with my spacebar, I can move my page around. So let's just draw an ellipse with a fill of none and a stroke of black to start with. Let's go to our rectangle tool, click on it, hold it down, go to our ellipse tool, and click on the fill chip in your tool palette and check off on the none button. Highlight the stroke, and let's give this a stroke of 2. So go over to your stroke tab under gradient styles and bring it up to 2. Now let's just draw a slender oval. There we go. I'm going to go over to my selection tool, just center that on my page a bit, and we're going to use the rotate tool to generate a rotation here. Now the rotate tool, as well as other tools such as the scale tool, is a two-step process. First, let's choose it by clicking on it, or you can type R on your keyboard. And the way that it works is your first click determines the axis that it will rotate around, and the second click and drag moves it by said amount. We'll try two ways. First we'll try a click and drag, and then I'll try it with implementing numerical data by actually option clicking. So first I click to create my axis, and you can see here there's a little crosshair with a dot in the middle. Now I want to duplicate this and not just rotate it, so I'm going to hold my option key down. You can see how my cursor changes there, and start to drag, and I'll just drag it about this much, then I'll let go of my mouse. Now the Transform Again tool is Command D on your keyboard, or you can go to Object, Transform, Transform Again. And I'll do it once through the palette, and the next time I'll do it through the keyboard. So here we go, Transform Again. And you see what it does is that it rotates and duplicates at the same angle as the previous move. It basically repeats your previous move. So now I can go Apple D and keep tapping on that D with my Apple key down, and it'll repeat that rotation, duplication along that one axis. And there we go. Now I got pretty lucky. It looks pretty good. It's not perfect in the last step though. If you want to get something perfectly on a circle, your best bet is to do it numerically and just do a number that divides evenly into 360 degrees. Let me grab this, highlight it, I will group it, Object, Group. I will shrink it by dragging on one of these corners with my Shift key down, and we'll just move it in the upper corner here. Let's draw a new one. Go to my ellipse tool. This time I'll make it a little smaller. Again, go to my rotate tool, but this time I will option click. You see how my cursor changes, option click, which calls up the dialog box. Now again, my angle needs to be divided evenly into 360. So let's say 12 degrees. and then we want to hit the copy button rather than the OK button. I'll hit preview so I can see that, then I'll hit copy. Now I can go command, which is the Apple key, and hit my letter D, and this time when it gets around to the beginning, the flower petal will be perfectly lined up. There we go. Now if I hit another one, it will perfectly overlap our first one. There we go. So I'll just undo that one step. Go to my selection tool, highlight it, group it, move it out of the way. So again, that's the basic concept behind the Transform Again tool. It works on movement, repositioning, it works on rotation, it works on scale. Move this out of the way. We'll try our next exercise, which is the snowflake. I'm going to move my text box out of the way here, and this window down here. Let's use our pen tool. And with the snowflake, what we're going to do is we're going to use the reflect tool to make an evenly symmetrical branch, and then once we have the branch, we'll link the endpoints together, then we'll rotate that branch around an axis to create our snowflake. So I'm going to go to my pen tool once again. This time I can put a fill in, so I'm going to go to my fill box and I'll just choose a blue. There we go. I'll keep a black outline. Now to begin our snowflake, we should draw a line that will be used as a guide. So let's use our pen tool. We'll click once, high, and then with my shift key down I'll click near the bottom of my page. Go to my selection tool, highlight that, which should be under the view, make guides, which is also command 5. Now you can see this is a guide. If I was to print this, it would not be visible. So it's actually not an object now, it's a guide. So now we'll draw an object so that it starts and ends on that line and doesn't cross over it. Go back to my pen tool, click on the line, just create some random shape here. I'll throw a little curvature in here, click and drag, click and drag, click and drag, click and drag, and simply click and click. So you see here how it's going all on the one side of the line. Go to your selection tool, highlight it by clicking on it in the fill area. And we're going to go to our reflect tool, which is underneath the rotate tool. It's also O on your keyboard. Now on this I'm going to again option click. I'm going to zoom in. I want to option click right on that line. So I'll go to the line, hold my option key down, then click. And we want to hit the copy. So make sure it's set to vertical, then click on the copy button. And you see how that gave us an exact reflection. Now go to your direct select tool, drag across the top 2 points, and we'll go path, join, which is also command J on your keyboard. We need to do that at the bottom. Choose corner point, click OK. Now you may need to zoom in good and close. You don't want to highlight more than 2 points for this. Drag across those 2 points. Object, path, join. Again, command J on your keyboard. Corner point. Zoom back out, command minus. Now this is a little big. I'm going to shrink this. So I'm going to go to my selection tool, highlight it, and just grab the corner, and with my shift key down I can shrink it. I don't need that guide anymore. So I'm going to go back to my view. Under guides, I'll click on the lock guides, which will unlock it, highlight it, and delete it. Now I'll go to that branch for my snowflake, Go back to my rotate tool, pull it out here. I'm going to click somewhere inside this time, in the center, and I'll hit my option key so that I get an even angle generated. Click on it, and I'll try an angle of 36 degrees, which means I'll have 10 branches around the circle. Click copy. I'm going to zoom out and then go Apple D. And there we go. And that's how we make a snowflake pattern. Now I'll just select all of that again and group it. Command G to group it. Move that aside. Save my file. I'm going to zoom in again. I'm actually going to shrink these objects. Highlight that. Grab it by the corner. Shift key down, shrink. As well as this. Okay, we'll move these guys to the top. Save my file, Command S. The next thing I want to do is the railroad ties in perspective. Now, using this transform again tool, we can actually make things recede into the distance, or at least appear to recede into the distance in proper perspective. We're going to use a one-point perspective concept, the rectangle. I'm going to choose a fill color of some orange. There, that's good. I'll keep a stroke of black. Now that I've got my color, I'm simply going to draw a triangle, and then I'll remove a part of the triangle using a tool called the Pathfinder that can actually cut away from a shape using another shape. So first I'll use my pen tool. I'll draw the horizontal line. I'll click. Then with my shift key down, I'll click again. Now I'll just draw the top point of that triangle and then close off my shape. Remember, when you're going over your beginning point, make sure your cursor shows this little circle, which means you will be closing the shape. Okay, let's just move this down the page a little bit. Now again, I'm going to use the Pathfinder, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a square over it here, which will remove this section. So I'll go to my rectangle tool, draw that square, and it really doesn't matter how big it is, it's just the area that it's covering that is my concern. And that should be good, which means everything above this line will get cut off. Now the part that gets cut away has to be the part that's overlapping. So now I select both of them by dragging across, go to my Pathfinder tab, and one of these tabs, the second one in under Shapes mode, is the Subtract from Shape area. So if I click on that, you can still see the original shape, but when I click away, all it's showing is the remainder. Now if I click on that again, I'm actually going to put a small box to represent my perspective point just above the point of this triangle. I will delete this a little later on. Okay, again, let's go back. Highlight the chopped off triangle in the foreground here. Go to your scale tool. Also S on the keyboard. Click on the little box at the top of the triangle. And now we will drag towards that box, and using the scale tool, it's best to go a little outside of the extreme edge that you're pushing towards your axis point. So a good point to start is by clicking here, and I want to duplicate this as well as constrain it, so I start with my option key down, click and push towards the point. Now I'll hit my shift key and hold it. You see how that constrains along the perspective line. Let it go right about here, and there we have what seems like two railroad ties in perspective. I simply have to go Command D to replicate that now. There we go, another tie into the perspective, another one, another one, another one. I'll go back to my selection tool. I will delete this box I created as my perspective point. Highlight all of these and group them. Now I can resize it, move it out of the way. Save my file. The last one we're going to do is the seashell, and we're going to do a little gradient inside of it. So let's first go to our oval tool. We'll just draw a big circle and then we'll change the color afterwards. And I'll draw it a little bit flat like an egg. Now, under your tool palette, below your color chips, click on the middle box for gradients. You notice right away it changes to a black and white gradient. Let's go change the gradient colors now. Again, 2 steps. We go to our gradient tab. Then we click on the gradient slider, and we're going to have to change the palette, then the color. So we've clicked on the slider. Let's go up to the color tab now. Change its palette to CMYK. Let's choose a nice orange, dark orange, and we'll gradate this from orange to yellow. So now go back to your gradient tab, click on the other gradient slider, go back to your color tab, change its color model to CMYK, and I will pick a yellow in here, and there we go. Now the last thing I want to do though is change this gradient from linear to radial. So you see here on my gradient tab I actually have a show options button, which I'll click, and now I can change that linear to radial. Now I actually want the orange to be on the outside and the yellow to be on the inside, so I'm going to move these sliders backwards from each other, and there you can see how I just reversed those colors back and forth. Okay, go to your selection tool. We'll just move this into place a little bit, and now we'll go to our scale tool. So I'll zoom in, spacebar to move, go to my scale tool, click. Actually, for this one, let's click outside of it just above a little bit. And now again, drag from just a little bit outside of the outer edge that you're going to drag from. Option key down, Shift key down, drag it about so far, let it go, and then Command D, Command D, Command D, Command D, Command D. There we got a nice little 3D looking shape. I call it a seashell, but it's just a nice 3D looking cone. Let's do another one now. This time we'll keep our click mark inside the circle. So again, I'll draw another circle, another ellipse. Since my colors are set, it will adopt those current colors. Go to my scale tool. This time I'll just simply click a little above the center point. Again, dragging out, Option key down, Shift key down, let it go, and then Command D to create almost like a target, I guess. Move that up here. I'll grab all of these actually and group them. Did I group these? No, let me grab these and group those as well. So here we have 4 distinct applications of the transform again functionality. We did use the Pathfinder for some features. We used the pen tool, we used the rotate tool, and we used the scale tool. And we actually used the rectangle as well as the ellipse tool to create this exercise. And that's it for this exercise using Adobe Illustrator.